For 5,000 years, the world had been silent. Humanity, once a powerful force that shaped the earth, was gone. The cities that once buzzed with life and activity had turned into lifeless ruins, their tall buildings now nothing more than broken skeletons of a forgotten time. The streets, once filled with the sound of footsteps, now echoed only with the whispers of the wind. Nature had slowly taken back the land. Trees grew through cracked roads, and animals roamed freely in places that had once been bustling metropolises. There was no sound of human voices, no cars speeding down roads, no laughter or shouts, just silence. The cause of humanity's disappearance was a mystery, one that had been lost to time. No one knew why or how the humans had vanished. Some believed it was a disaster, a war, a disease, or a catastrophe that wiped out the human race. Others whispered that something darker, something older, had caused their downfall. There were even tales of an ancient force, something known only as the Beast, that had been locked away for millennia. But these were just stories, myths passed down from the last remnants of humanity before they, too, disappeared. As the centuries passed, the earth began to heal itself. The forests grew thick, covering what was once a sprawling cityscape. Rivers carved new paths through the land, washing away the signs of human activity. Wild animals thrived, and nature took over the land with a power that seemed to say, "This world belongs to me now." The sky, once filled with the noise of airplanes and the lights of cities, now stretched wide and clear, untouched by human hands. Yet, the silence was not complete. There were always those who wondered, who had been here before. What had happened to the people? What had caused humanity to vanish so completely, leaving only ruins behind? These questions lingered in the minds of a few, but as the years turned into centuries, the answers became harder and harder to find. The world moved on, slowly forgetting the stories of the past. Among the few who still remembered was Alex, an explorer and survivor. He had heard the stories, the ones that spoke of the Beast. As a child, he had been fascinated by the myths and legends of his ancestors, but as he grew older, he realized that these stories were more than just fantasy. There were traces of truth in them, hidden in the oldest ruins, in the strange markings found on the walls of forgotten buildings. Alex believed that the key to understanding humanity's disappearance lay in these forgotten places. He had spent years searching for answers, combing through ancient libraries, studying the remnants of human technology, and piecing together the scattered bits of history. But he had found nothing. Nothing that could explain the sudden disappearance of humanity. No answers, no clues, just more silence. But that silence, that emptiness, was about to be broken. One day, as Alex ventured deep into a long-abandoned city, he stumbled upon something he had not expected to find. It was a building hidden beneath layers of earth and stone, its entrance obscured by the growth of centuries-old plants. The building was old, older than anything Alex had ever seen. It was buried deep beneath the ground, as if someone had tried to hide it away from the world. But the walls were covered in strange symbols, symbols that seemed to call to him, drawing him closer. His heart raced as he approached the entrance. This was it. This was what he had been searching for. He had heard rumors of a hidden underground complex, a place where the last secrets of humanity had been stored. And now, standing before the entrance, he realized that he had found it. Without thinking, Alex stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of old metal and stone filled his nostrils. The walls were lined with strange devices and forgotten machinery, some of which he couldn't even begin to understand. But there, in the center of the room, was something that caught his eye, a control panel. It was ancient, its buttons worn down from years of disuse, but it was still there, waiting. It looked like it hadn't been touched in centuries. His curiosity got the better of him. He couldn't resist the urge to learn what this place was. The buttons seemed to call to him, as if they were waiting for someone to push them. Hesitating for only a moment, Alex reached forward and pressed the largest button. The room trembled. It was subtle at first, a faint vibration beneath his feet, but then the ground shook more violently. The air seemed to change, heavy with anticipation. Something was happening. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he realized what he had done. The button he had pressed had activated something. But what? And what would it mean for the world that had forgotten the human race? As the tremors grew stronger, Alex heard a low rumble in the distance. It was a sound he couldn't place, a deep guttural noise that seemed to come from the very earth itself. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying. The beast, the ancient force that had been locked away for so long, had been awakened. The silence of the world was over. And something far worse than humanity's disappearance was about to begin. The control panel before Alex glowed faintly, its worn buttons waiting to be pressed. He had felt the pull, the undeniable draw of something ancient and powerful, something that had been buried beneath the earth for millennia. As he hesitated, a part of him wondered if it was wise to continue. After all, he had been searching for answers to humanity's disappearance for so long, and yet now that he was on the brink of uncovering something monumental, doubt began to creep in. But curiosity, a force just as old as the world itself, was too strong. With a deep breath, Alex pressed the largest button. The moment his fingers made contact, the room shook. It wasn't the subtle vibration he had felt before, but a strong tremor that sent dust and debris falling from the ceiling. The air seemed to grow heavier, charged with a strange energy. Alex stumbled back, his heart racing. A low rumble echoed from deep within the earth, coming from somewhere far below the complex. It was like the sound of something awakening, something vast, powerful, and ancient. The walls of the room groaned, and the tremors increased, shaking the very foundation of the building. For a moment, Alex wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. He took a step backward, scanning the room in panic. He had no idea what this place was or what he had just triggered. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse, as if reacting to the button he had pressed. The low rumble grew louder, reverberating through the ground beneath his feet. It was no longer just a distant sound. It was right there, close, as if something deep inside the earth was stirring. Suddenly, a sound pierced through the rumbling. A mechanical whirring, followed by a deep metallic thud. Alex turned sharply, and to his astonishment, a large section of the wall began to move. Slowly, almost reluctantly, it slid open, revealing an ancient tunnel. The walls of the tunnel were lined with strange, glowing symbols, and the air within was cool and dry. It seemed as though the tunnel had been waiting for someone to open it, to bring it back to life. Alex took a cautious step forward, drawn by the strange force pulling him toward the passageway. His mind raced with questions. What had he just uncovered? What was buried here, and why had it been hidden for so long? The rumble continued, now joined by the sound of something heavy moving deep beneath the earth's surface. Without thinking, Alex began to walk down the tunnel. The further he went, the more intense the sounds became. It was as if the earth itself was waking, as if it had been holding its breath for thousands of years, waiting for someone to disturb its slumber. As the walls narrowed, the air grew colder, and the glow of the symbols intensified. The tunnel stretched on, seemingly endless. After what felt like an eternity, Alex reached the end of the passage. Before him stood a massive door, its surface covered in the same strange symbols that lined the tunnel. But this door was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was ancient, forged from materials that seemed to defy time. The metal was dark, smooth, and cold to the touch. A faint hum vibrated from within, almost like a heartbeat, steady and strong. Alex's hands trembled as he reached for the door's handle. There was something about it that felt alive, as if it were waiting for him to open it, to reveal whatever lay behind. With a deep breath, he turned the handle and slowly pushed the door open. What he saw beyond that door made his heart skip a beat. Inside was a chamber, vast and empty. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop it, a single object, an orb glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The orb seemed to pulse with energy, casting strange shadows on the walls. Alex felt a surge of something deep inside him, something he couldn't explain, as if the orb was calling to him, urging him to approach. With hesitant steps, Alex walked toward the pedestal. He could feel the pull, stronger with every step. It was almost as if the orb was alive, watching him, waiting for him to come closer. He reached out slowly, his fingers brushing against its smooth surface. The moment his skin touched the orb, the room shuddered again. But this time, it was different. The tremors weren't from the earth. They came from within the orb itself. Suddenly, a voice echoed through his mind, a voice ancient and powerful, as old as time itself. It spoke in a language Alex didn't understand, but somehow he knew what it meant. The beast had awoken. The voice faded, leaving only a deafening silence in its wake. The orb pulsed one last time, brighter than ever before, and then the room grew still. Alex's heart raced as the full realization of what he had just done hit him. He had awakened something that had been hidden away for centuries. The beast had been trapped, waiting, and now it was free. The air in the chamber grew thick with tension, and Alex knew, deep in his bones, that nothing would ever be the same again. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The earth was no longer the same, and neither was humanity. Whatever the beast was, it was about to change everything. The ground trembled beneath Alex's feet as the orb's light dimmed, leaving the room in an eerie silence. He stood frozen, his hand still touching the orb, feeling the vibrations deep within his bones. The strange energy that had pulsed through him moments ago had now disappeared, leaving only a heavy sense of dread hanging in the air. The voice, though faint, echoed in his mind, and Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something vast and powerful had been awakened. It wasn't just the earth that was changing, it was something far greater, something that had been dormant for far too long. As Alex slowly pulled his hand away from the orb, he noticed something that hadn't been there before. The walls of the chamber, which had once seemed solid and unchanging, were now shifting. The strange symbols that lined the walls began to glow once more, brighter this time, as though they were alive. The glow pulsed in rhythm with the deep vibrations that now seemed to resonate from beneath the earth. It wasn't just the orb that was causing these tremors. It was something far deeper, something more ancient, stirring from its slumber. Alex's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what was happening. He had been searching for answers for so long, and now it seemed that he had found them. But the truth was far more terrifying than he had imagined. The beast, whatever it was, had been locked away for a reason. The legends spoke of its power, but they were just stories. Stories that seemed so distant, so unreal. Now, standing in the heart of the chamber, Alex realized that the beast wasn't just a myth. It was real, and it was waking. With a sudden rush of understanding, Alex realized that the orb wasn't just a relic of the past, it was a key to something that had been sealed away, something that was never meant to be released. The beast had been trapped, hidden from the world, protected from the ravages of time. But now, the lock had been broken. The door to its prison had been opened, and the creature that had slumbered for millennia was stirring. Alex could feel the tension in the air, thick and oppressive. The very earth seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the next step. He had made a choice that could not be undone. The weight of that realization settled heavily on his shoulders. What would happen next? What would the beast do now that it was free? Would it seek to reclaim what it had lost, or would it be more destructive than he could possibly imagine? As Alex turned to leave the chamber, the ground beneath him rumbled once more. The rumble wasn't coming from deep within the earth anymore. It was coming from the surface, from above. Something was moving, something vast, and it was coming closer. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with energy, and the glowing symbols on the walls flickered as if responding to the movement above. It was like the earth itself was alive, reacting to the presence of the beast. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he hurried toward the tunnel, his mind racing with questions and fear. He had to get out of there, but he didn't know where he was going. The world outside had changed. The world he had known, empty, abandoned, forgotten, was no longer the same. It was as though something had shifted, as if the very balance of the earth had been altered. The silence that had reigned for 5,000 years was over. The beast had awakened, and the world was about to face the consequences. As Alex emerged from the tunnel and into the open air, he was met with a sight that left him breathless. The sky, once clear and peaceful, was now heavy with dark clouds. The wind howled through the trees, bending them in strange ways. The air felt charged, like a storm was brewing. It wasn't just a physical storm. The world was shifting, changing. Something was happening, and Alex knew, deep down, that it was only the beginning. In the distance, he could see the outline of the city, once a place of human achievement, now a ruin of broken buildings and crumbling streets. But there was something different about it now. The ruins seemed to pulse, as though the earth itself was responding to the awakening of the beast. The ground around the city was shaking, small tremors rippling through the landscape. Alex realized with growing horror that the earth was not just reacting to the beast, it was being reshaped by its presence. With each passing moment, the rumble grew louder, closer. The ground cracked open in places, as though the earth itself was splitting apart. The trees shook, and the animals, once so free and unbothered by the presence of humans, now scattered in fear. They knew that something had changed. The beast's power had begun to radiate across the land. Alex felt a chill run down his spine as the reality of what he had done set in. He had awoken the beast, and now the world would never be the same. The earth itself was responding to its awakening, and the silence of 5,000 years had been shattered. What was once a peaceful world, untouched by humanity, was now on the brink of something far more dangerous. As the tremors continued, Alex knew one thing for certain. He could not undo what he had done. The beast was awake, and the world would have to face the consequences. The earth had changed, and there was no going back. The sun had barely risen when Alex made his way back to the ruins of the city. The air was thick with unease, and the ground beneath his feet trembled faintly with each step. He had never imagined that something as simple as pressing a button would have led to this, a world on the edge of transformation. The beast, the one that had slumbered beneath the earth for 5,000 years, was now awake, and there was no telling what kind of change it would bring. The distant skyline was shrouded in an eerie haze. The buildings, once proud symbols of human achievement, now stood as jagged reminders of what had been lost. Their shattered windows reflected the strange light in the sky, light that wasn't quite natural, a glow that seemed to pulse with the same rhythm as the tremors that rocked the earth. Alex's mind raced as he walked through the ruins, trying to make sense of the chaos that had unfolded. The world was changing, but how? What had been awakened beneath the earth? The legends had spoken of the beast, but they were nothing more than myth. Stories to entertain or warn, but not real, not until now. He paused in the middle of the broken street, looking around. The wind howled, carrying with it the scent of something different. It wasn't the scent of nature. It wasn't the clean, fresh air of the wilderness. It was something heavier, thicker, like the very atmosphere had changed in response to the awakening of whatever lay beneath the ground. Alex's heart pounded in his chest. He had felt the strange power radiating from the orb, and he knew that it was only the beginning. The voice that had echoed in his mind, the voice of the beast, had been clear, but what did it mean? The beast had awoken, it had said, but what did that truly entail? As he walked further into the city, he noticed something unsettling. The ruins were not as lifeless as they had seemed at first. There was movement, small, subtle shifts. The buildings creaked and groaned, as if they too were coming alive. It was as if the earth, in its deep slumber, had been dreaming of this moment, dreaming of what was to come when the beast was freed. Alex stopped in front of a crumbled monument. It had once been a symbol of humanity's triumph, but now it seemed like a forgotten relic, a symbol of an age-long past. He ran his fingers over the rough stone, thinking back to the time before all of this, the time when humanity had thrived, when the earth had been a place of innovation and hope. But now, all that remained was silence and dust, broken dreams scattered across the land. He thought back to the moment when he had activated the orb, that initial rush of energy, the feeling that something was stirring beneath his feet. It had felt like the earth itself had been holding its breath, waiting for him to unlock the door to whatever lay beneath. And now, the door had been opened, and nothing would ever be the same again. A deep rumble echoed through the ground, louder this time. It wasn't just the earth shaking. It was something else, something deeper, a force from beneath the surface, moving and shifting. The sky above darkened, casting the city in a shadow that seemed unnatural, as though the heavens themselves were reacting to the disturbance below. Alex's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flash of light. He looked up, squinting against the brightness. It wasn't sunlight. It was something else, something unnatural. The light flickered, then began to pulse, almost in time with the tremors. It was coming from the distant horizon, from the place where the earth seemed to open up and swallow the land whole. The pulse of light grew stronger, more intense, and Alex realized with a start that it wasn't just light. It was energy, raw and untamed. The sky was alive, as if responding to the ancient power now reawakened below. Alex's heart raced, and he began to run, his footsteps echoing in the quiet streets. The light was drawing closer, faster than he had anticipated. It was like the earth itself was reacting to the beast, reaching up from beneath to greet the change that had been set in motion. As he reached the edge of the city, Alex looked back. The sky had turned a deep, unsettling red, and the pulsing light was now a storm, swirling above the ruins, casting everything in an otherworldly glow. It was as if the world was on the verge of something monumental. He stood there, staring at the sky, unsure of what to do next. What had he unleashed? What would happen when the beast fully awakened? The tremors beneath his feet grew more intense, and he realized with a chilling certainty that the earth was not simply shaking, it was shifting. The very landscape was changing, reacting to the presence of the beast, as though the planet itself was coming to terms with the ancient power it had hidden for millennia. Suddenly, Alex felt a presence. It wasn't a physical feeling, but a mental one. It was like a weight on his mind, a pressure that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. He looked around, but there was nothing visible. Still, he could feel it, deep within him. It was the beast, and it was watching him. It was aware of his presence, aware of the fact that he had been the one to awaken it. For the first time since this whole ordeal had begun, Alex felt a deep, visceral fear. The world was no longer the same. It was as though the laws of nature had shifted, and the rules that governed humanity were no longer in control. The beast, whatever it was, had broken free from its prison, and the world was now in its hands. Alex stood there, frozen in place, unable to turn away from the swirling chaos in the sky. The storm was drawing closer, and he could feel the weight of the earth shifting beneath him. What would happen next? Would the world survive the awakening of the beast, or was this the beginning of the end? Only time would tell. The winds were picking up as Alex walked farther away from the ruins, the once familiar landscape now appearing more alien with each passing moment. The sky had turned a deep shade of violet, swirling with strange energy. The air was thick with an almost electric charge, as though something monumental was about to unfold. He could still feel the presence of the beast, lingering in the back of his mind, as though it were watching him, waiting. Every step he took felt heavier, as if the earth itself was drawing him deeper into its mysteries. The tremors had not stopped, but now they seemed to be fading into the distance, leaving behind a kind of silence that was both unsettling and profound. The world had changed, and yet in this stillness, Alex couldn't help but feel a strange sense of anticipation. What was coming? What would the beast do now that it was awake? As Alex looked around, he noticed the changes to the world around him. The once lush forest had begun to wither, the trees bending unnaturally, their leaves turning an eerie shade of gray. The flowers that had once bloomed with vibrant colors now lay wilted, their petals crumbling as if they were being drained of life. It was as though the earth itself was being drained of energy, its vitality fading away. Was this the influence of the beast? Was it sucking the life from the world around it? The landscape was no longer as he remembered it. The rivers that had once flowed freely were now barely moving, the water still and lifeless. The mountains, which had stood as silent sentinels for centuries, now seemed to groan under the weight of the change. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath, waiting for something, waiting for the next phase of the awakening to begin. Alex had never felt so alone. He had always imagined that humanity would be the one to shape the future, to carve out a place for itself in the universe. But now, it seemed that the Earth was moving in a direction that had nothing to do with humans. The beast, the force that had been hidden away for so long, had its own plans, and it was not concerned with the fate of the human race. As Alex continued his journey through the barren landscape, he felt a pull, something deep within the Earth, something ancient. It was the same pull he had felt back in the chamber with the orb, but now it was stronger, more urgent. It was as if the beast was calling to him, summoning him to come closer, to face whatever lay ahead. Alex had no choice but to follow the pull. He had unleashed this, and now he had to face the consequences. The path ahead was difficult to navigate. What had once been a clear road was now broken, with cracks in the earth and debris scattered everywhere. The trees, those that remained, seemed to stretch toward him, their gnarled branches reaching out like twisted fingers. The very ground seemed to shift beneath his feet, threatening to swallow him whole with every step. But Alex couldn't stop. He couldn't turn back. The world had already changed too much, and there was no escaping the path he had set in motion. As he moved forward, his mind raced with questions. How had the beast been sealed away in the first place? What had it done to deserve such a long slumber? And most importantly, what was it going to do now that it was free? The further he walked, the more Alex began to sense that the beast wasn't just a force of destruction. It was something more, something older than humanity, something tied to the very fabric of the planet. The pull he felt was not just an invitation. It was a connection, a bond between the beast and the earth itself. The beast had not just been sealed away because it was dangerous. It had been sealed because it was part of the planet's balance, a force that, if unleashed, would reshape everything. As the land became more desolate, Alex's thoughts turned to humanity. What would happen to the people who had once populated this planet? Would they be able to survive the changes, or were they doomed to be swept away by the forces the beast would unleash? The human race had always believed that it was the pinnacle of creation, that it held dominion over the earth. But now, as he stood in this altered world, Alex couldn't help but feel that humanity had been nothing more than a fleeting chapter in the Earth's long story. But the question that haunted him the most was whether humanity would have any place in the future the beast was creating. Was this the end of human civilization, or was there still hope for survival? The beast had been trapped for thousands of years, and now that it was free, it seemed that the Earth itself was being remade in its image. There was no way of knowing what that future would look like, but Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of inevitability. The Earth was not going to go back to how it was. The beast had seen to that. As Alex reached the center of the wasteland, he came upon a strange formation, a series of large stones arranged in a circular pattern. The stones were ancient, their surfaces covered in runes and symbols that Alex couldn't decipher. It was as if they were calling to him, as though they knew he had arrived at the moment of reckoning. The pull was stronger now, and Alex knew that this was where he had to be. This was the heart of the Earth's ancient power, the place where the beast's influence was at its strongest. He stepped into the center of the circle, and for a moment, everything went still. The air around him felt heavy, charged with a force he couldn't explain. The stones seemed to glow with an inner light, casting shadows that danced across the ground. It was as if the earth itself was alive, watching him, waiting for him to make the next move. Then, as if in response to his presence, a deep rumble echoed from the ground. It wasn't just the tremors Alex had felt before. It was something more profound, more resonant. The earth was waking up, and so was the beast. The world was on the brink of a new chapter, one where humanity's role was no longer certain. The power of the beast was here, and there was no going back. Alex stood in the center of the circle of stones, feeling the weight of the moment settle around him. The ground beneath his feet thrummed with energy, as though the very earth was vibrating in anticipation of something yet to come. The air was thick with a kind of tension that made every breath feel heavier, as if the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next step. He could feel the presence of the beast again, this time even more palpable, a silent whisper in the back of his mind that made his heart race. It was as if the beast had been watching him all along, observing his every move. And now, as the tension in the air grew thicker, Alex realized that the time had come to face whatever this force truly was. The world around him had changed completely since he first stumbled upon the orb. The ancient ruins, the strange energy in the sky, the unnatural glow in the atmosphere. It was all part of something much bigger, something Alex hadn't fully understood until now. The beast wasn't just a legend. It was a force that had been tied to the earth for millennia, and it had been waiting for this exact moment to break free. As Alex's mind raced, his gaze wandered over the circle of stones. The runes carved into them glowed faintly, their symbols shifting and twisting in ways that made no logical sense. They seemed to pulse with life, their patterns not just carved into the stone, but alive, changing before his eyes. There was something ancient about them, something that spoke of a time long before humanity had even walked the earth. The more Alex stared at the symbols, the more he began to feel a connection to them. It wasn't just a mental understanding, it was deeper than that. Something primal. The symbols weren't just markings, they were part of a language of the earth itself. And somehow, Alex could sense that they were speaking to him. They were guiding him, pulling him into the heart of this transformation. The rumbling from deep below the earth continued, growing louder, as if the beast was stirring once again. Alex could feel the pull in his chest, as though the power of the beast was drawing him closer, calling him to step into the unknown. There was no turning back now. He had made the choice when he first activated the orb, and now he had to see it through to the end. The ground began to crack, not violently, but with a steady, almost deliberate force. Small fissures appeared, weaving their way through the earth like veins, spreading out from the center of the stone circle. Alex's heart raced as he watched, unsure of what would happen next, but knowing deep down that this was just the beginning of something far greater than he could comprehend. The air around him shimmered, as if the very fabric of reality was beginning to bend. The stones in the circle seemed to pulse with energy, their glow intensifying as the vibrations from the earth grew stronger. It was as if the power of the beast was reaching out, filling the air, seeping into everything. Alex could feel it in his skin, in his bones. It was not just the land that was changing, it was the very essence of life itself. In that moment, Alex understood that the beast was not an enemy, not a monster to be feared. It was a force, a natural part of the Earth's cycle, a guardian of the planet's balance. The Earth had been its prison, its slumbering state, and now, as it awakened, it sought to restore that balance. Humanity had played its part in this cycle, but now its role was unclear. The beast would reshape the Earth in ways that Alex couldn't even begin to imagine, and humanity would either adapt or fade into history. But the question still lingered in his mind. Could humanity survive this change? Would they be able to coexist with the beast, or would the world be irreversibly altered, leaving humans to search for a place in a world that no longer felt like their own. As Alex stood there, the wind picked up again, whipping around him with greater force. It wasn't like the winds he had known. This was something different, something more ancient. The air was charged, as though it carried the echoes of centuries past, whispering secrets to anyone who would listen. The sky above continued to darken, the violet hue now deepening to a rich, almost unnatural shade of purple. The world was alive in a way that Alex had never experienced before, as if every living thing was awakening alongside the beast. The rumbling continued to grow, but now it was accompanied by a sound, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to come from the very core of the earth. It was a sound of life, of power, of something older than civilization itself. It was a song, not of destruction, but of rebirth. And then, as if on cue, the ground before Alex shifted, pulling apart like a curtain being drawn back. From within the depths of the earth, a light began to shine, not bright, but soft, warm, as though it were the heart of the planet itself. The light grew, spreading outward from the fissure in the earth, as the world seemed to hold its breath. Alex stepped forward, drawn toward the light, knowing that whatever lay ahead would change everything. The air around him crackled with energy, the stones glowing brighter as he moved closer. His heart was pounding in his chest, his mind racing, but all he could do was move forward, step by step, drawn into the unknown. What would happen next? Would the beast reshape the earth as it had done before? Would humanity survive the storm that was about to break? All Alex could do was walk into the light, knowing that this was the moment when everything would be decided. The future of the earth and the future of humanity rested in the hands of the beast and in his own. As the fissure in the earth widened, Alex took a deep breath and stepped into the light, embracing whatever was to come.